If you are breastfeeding your baby and you've been told that you cannot improve your baby's sleep without weaning first, this video is for you. So you're breastfeeding and you desperately want better sleep, but you are so worried that if you were to sleep train that you are going to ruin your breastfeeding relationship, or you're worried that you would have to quit breastfeeding in order to start sleep training. And luckily for you, neither of those things are true. So delaying better sleep because of bad advice can lead to months of unnecessary exhaustion. And the reality is you can absolutely maintain your breastfeeding relationship, breastfeed as long and as often as you want to, and still get so much better sleep. Maybe the lack of sleep has led to you not enjoying parenting as much as you thought you would because you're so freaking exhausted all the time and you can't even think straight. So of course you're not enjoying those little moments with your baby or your toddler as much as you would be if you were well rested. Maybe you're also noticing that your toddler or your baby is impacted by the lack of sleep. Maybe they're super cranky during the day, or they struggle to fall asleep, and then once they fall asleep, they're awake again after 20 minutes and you're frustrated because you don't know what to do differently. So as a sleep consultant and as somebody who has trained over 600 other sleep consultants, this is a myth that I wish would disappear. It is so frustrating because it keeps breastfeeding moms like you stuck in this cycle where you believe that you have to give up one in order to have the other, and the reality could not be further from the truth. So I want to start by telling you about a story that I heard from another mom recently. She reached out to me desperate for sleep help. She was just talking to a few different sleep consultants to see who was going to be the best fit for her. And whenever we started talking, she shared with me that she was breastfeeding, and I could tell immediately that she was apprehensive about talking about that. And so I told her, that's great. That's awesome. Let's talk about how we can maintain that while we're still sleep training. And I was about to get into all of that. And she stopped me and said, I am so relieved to hear you say that because the last sleep consultant I spoke with said that they could absolutely help me, but they could only help me after I had weaned my baby from breastfeeding. I said, excuse me, what? I was absolutely blown away and could not believe that another expert in the field had given this information to a mom. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how your baby is fed. All that matters is teaching independent sleep. And that type of information that is so false is extremely frustrating because it's not that it's just bad advice, but it's also keeping so many families stuck in this vicious cycle of not getting the sleep that they need to actually thrive as a family. So here's the reality. Breastfeeding and independent sleep are not mutually exclusive. You can absolutely have both together. You just have to know how to approach it so that they both work well together. And this is exactly what Rachel on my team helps families with uncovering. After she's worked with more than 5,000 families in the last 11 years, she knows exactly how to help families navigate through these situations and ensure that we're protecting your breastfeeding relationship while also getting you better sleep. We offer a free 15-minute call. You can find the link in our description below where you can chat with her, and if it's a good fit, she will share with you how you can work with us. Okay, back to it. So when we talk about sleep training and independent sleep, what are we actually talking about? Because that's what truly matters in this conversation. Sleep training is simply teaching a baby or a toddler how to fall to sleep and back to sleep independently. And when I say independently, all that means is without you needing to help them fall back to sleep or to sleep. So that means we are no longer feeding to sleep, we are no longer rocking them to sleep or laying with them until they fall asleep. We are teaching them how to feel absolutely confident in their ability to get to sleep and back to sleep on their own. Now, I think why so many breastfeeding moms get stuck here is because naturally, whenever we are feeding a baby through breastfeeding, it's super comfy for the baby, right? Like they're all snuggled up against you. A lot of times it's skin on skin. They are just super duper comfy, and it's natural for them to be able to fall asleep very easily whenever they are breastfeeding. And so that is what leads to a very common feed to sleep association with your baby whenever you are breastfeeding. So what we have to do whenever we approach the situation and we are wanting to instill independent sleep habits is we just have to ensure that the baby is no longer feeding to sleep. You can feed them 10 times a night if you want to. Obviously, whenever you're trying to get more sleep, that's not the goal, but I'm just saying you do not have to stop feeding your baby overnight in order to get better sleep. All that you have to do is stop feeding them to sleep. So what we would do in the middle of the night instead of feeding them to sleep whenever they wake up is you would go ahead and feed your baby like you normally would. You would make sure that they're staying awake during that feeding, and then as soon as you're done feeding them, you will put them back down in their crib and allow them to fall back to sleep independently. Whenever we are feeding them to sleep, what we are doing is we are creating an association with that feeding to sleep. They now believe that is how they have to fall asleep because it's literally the only thing that they know. And so when we are deciding to teach independent sleep, all that we're doing is changing the way that they fall asleep. We're not changing how they're fed. We're not changing anything else. We're changing how they fall asleep. So the feeding method itself makes no difference in this process other than the fact that we need to ensure they're not falling asleep while they're feeding. And of course, whenever we work with you individually, we're going to be going through all of the details with you to ensure that they're not falling asleep and to help guide you through that process. So at the end of the day, the feeding method, whether it's bottle feeding or breastfeeding, is not the thing that determines success with sleep training. What determines success is consistency, having an actual plan to follow, and knowing what to do in the individual situations where your baby is needing to fall to or back to sleep so that you can approach it in the right way and potentially break that feeding to sleep association. We do not encourage breastfeeding moms to minimize the amount of feeding that they're doing overnight. We don't encourage them to stop breastfeeding earlier than they are wanting to. We encourage them to feed as long and as often as they want to. Again, the only change is that we are no longer feeding to sleep. We are simply teaching a new way to fall asleep. So what should you do instead? You should continue breastfeeding for as long as it works for your family. If you are happy with breastfeeding, if your baby is thriving and doing great, continue breastfeeding as long as you want to. Continue feeding your baby overnight. If that is working for you, if your baby is doing well with that, if your baby still needs that overnight feed, keep feeding them overnight. What we're going to do is we are going to focus on helping your baby learn how to fall back to sleep after that feeding without needing to be fed back to sleep. So what happens is instead of your baby relying on that feeding in order to get back to sleep, they are now relying on that feeding for nutrition and connection and not for sleep. Sleep comes from a different process, from their ability to feel confident in being able to fall back to sleep without needing to feed to sleep. And that is exactly what we teach them through the sleep training process. So as a quick recap, you do not have to choose between breastfeeding and sleep. You can have both. Believing this myth that you cannot sleep train whenever you are breastfeeding is what is keeping so many families stuck. Simply changing how your baby falls to sleep, not changing how they are fed, but changing how they fall asleep, is the key to improving your child's sleep without ending or disrupting your breastfeeding journey. So have you ever been told that you would have to stop breastfeeding in order to start getting better sleep? If so, I would love to have you comment and let me know what you've heard and what the craziest piece of advice is that you've received around this topic. Another great video for you to watch would be our video about why your baby is waking up every 2 hours overnight and whether that feeding is related to hunger or habit. I will link it in the description below. And as I mentioned earlier, if you are looking for customized sleep support or for an amazing sleep course, I want you to check out our links below. You can also find a link for connecting with Rachel directly to chat through your specific situation and find out if it's a good fit for us to work together and help you through your baby or toddler's sleep challenges. And one more thing before you go, if you have ever thought about building a business from home and you are interested in exploring what it would look like to help other families get better sleep, just like we do as sleep consultants, we have a sleep consultant certification and business accelerator program that is there to help you with earning thousands of dollars per month while working from home and being present with your family. And so we have a free sleep community where you can jump in and learn so much about this business. You can find our income calculator, graduate stories, and a full 4-part training where I break down exactly how it all works. You can find a link below in the description for joining that free community, and I would love to see you there. That is it for this week. I will see you back here in a few days for our next video.